Hi, everyone, and welcome to this conversation I'm having with Dr. Stephen Terrell. Dr. Stephen Terrell is a leading expert in developmental trauma, and he's the one that developed transforming touch. And I am honored and humbled to be having this conversation with Dr. Terrell. Dr. Terrell, would you like to introduce yourself? Get
I'll
started.
do. I think that your introduction was perfect and I appreciate it and I'm grateful for it. Thank God. Um, I've been working in the area of developmental trauma for years. I live developmental trauma. I experience developmental trauma. I have children that came into the world in developmental trauma that are adopted. Um, my whole practice has been around attachment, separation, and the trauma of either in utero trauma or generational trauma coming into effect, the outcome or the outsource of our lives. So thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd love to start off with explaining what transforming touch is. And it's often described as a somatic healing modality. And if possible, if you can describe it and tell us how it is in comparison to other modalities, that would be
Sure,
thank
sure. Somatic in itself is body. Anything to do with body falls under somatic healings. So it's more of a larger umbrella that therapeutically we can say, okay, massage is also a somatic healing as well as somatic experiencing, SRT, we can go down the long line. Anything that brings us back into our body is considered some sort of somatic. Transforming touch in itself, it came out of and has been most frequently, most often used in developmental trauma. Most of the other somatic traumas that therapies that are modalities that I'm familiar with are going to deal more with a shock trauma. And shock means that we had a life and then there was an event and we want to get back to the life we had before. In developmental trauma, there is no life before. We come into the world already in a survival mode. Our first earliest years of life are in survival mode. We stay in survival mode, most of us, all the way through our whole life. It just becomes less survival, but we're still working towards just making it through the day, so to speak. But oftentimes with developmental trauma, we're not even aware how hard we're working because we've done it all of our life. It's not like today is going to be any different than yesterday or tomorrow. So we get caught in that negative feedback loop that, oh, this is the way it's always going to be. It's always been this way. Or I don't really see that my life's affected when my life is totally affected. So transforming touch comes in and it brings in relationship. And in that relationship opens the door that says, there's now a possibility that my earlier relationships could be healed through a relationship today. It won't completely go back and erase any memories, but maybe it'll soften the blows. Maybe it'll soften what occurred from unavailable parenting or unavailable caretaking, whichever words we want to use. Maybe it's going to soften those blows. So we bring in that relational piece, and then we bring in somatic trust. And somatic trust is where our bodies couldn't trust that there was going to be enough of anyone to take care of us. It's interesting. We started asking people, do you remember being held? Do you remember anyone holding you? Do you remember anyone touching you? What was that like for you? Where did that go to? And oftentimes we hear that there weren't a lot of people that remember being held in their parents' laps or being comforted with touch. They're more likely to go to negative touch. And they say, oh, well, somebody did this, or I got hit, or something else is going to be um, taking place that would have had an effect on the touch. So with somatic trust, we're coming in and saying, with your permission, with your permission, I'm going to touch you with light touch in your adrenal area. I'm going to support those, or I'm going to support your brain stem. You're fully dressed, you're fully aware. All of these questions are asked before we get started. And we do it. If we say, okay, I'm going to touch you here for 3 minutes, we're only there for 3 minutes. And no matter what's happening in the field, we're moving on. We're going to stick with our word. We're going to keep on moving and keep on going, unless the client says, wait, stop, I can't go forward. And then we go, okay, this is a place for us to pause. And in that pause, maybe we'll stop completely. Maybe if it's too much, maybe we need to do less time and less and building that somatic trust. And the third leg of transforming touch is primitive reflexes, and realizing that if our mother or the mother was threatened in the first trimester and that threat didn't go away, then that baby, the fear paralysis never integrated, which is a normal part of protecting the early fetus. So that early baby was threatened already. So that just means more primitive reflexes for survival did not fully integrate. And we may still be dealing with them today. We may be 90 years old and still dealing with something that should have disappeared during utero, during the pregnancy, way back here. And then the fourth part is epigenetically looking and going, oh, yeah, this person, maybe your relatives were in horrible situations, which we know in the Orthodox community, it's true. We know that they were in encampment. We know that they were mistreated. We know that they were killed. We know all of these things, and they don't just disappear. The greatest studies we have in epigenetics is in the Orthodox community. Those studies tell us that what happened to your parents and your grandparents affects the way you live your life today. And so if we can come in and we can soften that effect, we'll never take away the memory of what happened. Nobody could go to Auschwitz or any of those places and ever imagine that they were resorts. I mean, those were always horrible, horrible places, and they'll always be horrible, horrible places. Except maybe we can look back and go, even though that was a really horrible thing for my parent, I don't have to keep carrying that burden. I don't have to keep carrying the effect of what happened in Auschwitz or what happened wherever. I don't have to keep that burden. I can be grateful and thank God that I don't have to. And I can move to where I have survival in this reality right now. Because right now doesn't ever get better until right now it gets better. And so I have to work on right now. Right now has to heal. And if right now heals, then generationally up and generational down, our legacy down and our generation up, there can be healing all around us. It's not just me that's healing. I'm just part of this world and this community that if I can find healing and understanding in myself, so can my children and my children's children. And I can change the trajectory and I can change where I don't have to work so hard and my children don't have to work so hard. But it also goes upline. If my parents are still alive, they don't have to work so hard either. So it's going both ways.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That was so well explained. I appreciate that. And the idea of early developmental trauma in terms in connection to regular trauma, like how is that different? Do they react? Does the body react the same way to both of those traumas? Is there a difference? Is there a difference in the way of us approaching how we support? Would you be able to explain that, please?
Well, I think that it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It goes back to that idea that with shock trauma, you have a stable life. you have a bit of stability. You have an understanding. You might have a secure person in your life. You may have not have felt a full act of abandonment. You may not have felt persecution. You may not have felt those things. You might have thought, my life's going pretty good. And then an event occurs. And that event changes how you're now living life. And the recovery from that event is that I go back to where I was before the event. I want to go back to the life I had before the car wreck, before the train derailed, before whatever happened. I want to go to the life before there because I liked that life and that was a pretty good life. So that's kind of shock trauma, bringing that in and going, oh, there is a place that I'm going to know when I get there. With developmental trauma, we don't know when we get there because we've never been there before. So how do we know, is this as good as it gets? Or does it get better? We don't know. We don't know because there's no formula that we can plug in and say, oh yeah, before I was, it doesn't make sense. So all I've ever known is survival. So with developmental trauma, there's always that survival piece. But what we do know is that studies are telling us more and more frequently, which is interesting. There could be 5 people in a car wreck. And out of those 5 people in the car wreck, 4 of them walk away basically unscathed, unharmed, psychologically fine. One of them falls apart and their whole life becomes disrupted. When we look further at the one person who became disrupted, they have developmental trauma. Their resources were not as strong or at a level that it would take to go through a major disruption in life. So they didn't quite get through the conflict. That's the reason rules are so important. If you live a rule-based life with nothing but rules, the guardrails are pretty tight to keep you in it. And it's like you might say, oh, look, I have $50,000 in the bank, so I'm successful. But then you turn around and look, and your family's falling apart. Nobody's happy. And you go home, and nobody's happy. And there's a lot of unhappiness and all around you, but you're in these rails. So what if you still live by the rules, but the rules don't guide you? You guide the rules. You kind of, ah, let me just live my life. This is how I choose to live my life. And then I obey my choice. That's so freeing just to say, this is the life I choose. This is how I choose to live my life, other than my life's being lived this way because I have no other choice. That's through having resilience. That's the highest of highest thinking. The closest to God I could ever be is to be there by choice, not by you have to do this to get here. It's yes, here I am.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so another thing we learned is the concept of intentional touch, where we support through attention alone.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain why that's just as powerful as physical touch?
I have no idea. The only thing I could figure out, I have to tell you that, oh, if it wasn't for the pandemic, we would never have intentional touch in
Oh
my
wow.
head.
Oh wow.
The pandemic said, where I live, we got locked in our houses. It was like you really could. Police would drive up and down the streets to be sure you were in your houses. I mean, we were that much martial law here where I live. I mean, it was pretty scary. So we couldn't go to our offices. So here I am, a touch therapist going, wait a minute, what am I going to do now? How am I going to what? And I said, okay, I'll try this thing. And so I tried it, and only by the grace of God, only by the grace of God did I try it, because otherwise I would still be hungry, I'm sure, because I wouldn't have had any income. Everything, was depending on me being able to support my sons, pay my, electric bill and all those things. And so I thought, okay, God, just help me understand, help me understand. And I kept hearing, and I still hear, you don't need to know. And I go, what do you mean I don't need to know, God? Let me have a little bit more information. And I get that word over and over and over again, faith. If I have faith in God, I don't have to touch. I can work with you from here, and I can affect your regulation by being constant, being on time, being present with you, bringing my intention, my awareness, being able to hold that space and have faith that it's not about me. What happens to you is not about me. I'm just a conduit in here, and in transforming intentional touch, that's really where I really realize, when you're actually touching somebody, you kind of feel like you got something going on here. So it's kind of like you actually, but when you're working online, I mean, I could work with someone. Well, I just worked with someone this morning in Jerusalem. At 8 o'clock this morning, I was working with people in Jerusalem, and I'm like, okay, God, and it doesn't matter. It's like I'm teleported to Jerusalem, and they're teleported to Texas. And in that relationship, and my faith in the work, and my faith in God, my faith in God first, it just opens up a whole world that I didn't think was humanly possible. What about, I get calls from people that are Orthodox in the most bizarre locations where I think, are there really Orthodox people living there? Why are you there? Pack up and
Probably
move.
Chabad.
Yeah, why are you even there? So it's still, and but the work is very powerful. So
Wow.
God doesn't know distance.
Mm. Wow.
That's us. That's humans. We know distance, but God doesn't. God doesn't notice anything. God just knows us as bundles of love. So trust,
Mhm.
faith, and then let it happen. And with, in the community, and my experience has been very strongly, I respect women working with women. I respect men working with men. And I respect there are those who cross those set guidelines, and they figured out with their rabbis or whatever, they figured out I can do this, and they're doing, and I respect them. And I expect, I respect the whole process of the community, and I want to support where men are realize, men are starting to work on their wives
Mm.
or with their wives or in support of their wives instead of seeing their wives. Maybe that connection is vital. I don't know. It seems to me like it's an important piece when we touch someone without any expectation. And so we see it. Parents who are working with their children, both, moms and dads are stepping up and going, let's see what happens. I support that.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And this all sounds so easy and simple. Is
No,
healing really that easy?
no. Well, it is. Yes. Yes, truly it is, but we're humans and we get caught in the story and we get caught in all these things. But, God says once we know the solution and the God solution is God, there's no other, it's over. But we as humans hang on to it. We hang on to the despair. I say that healing is about acceptance, and resistance. And it's, if we're going to add some seasoning to that, is suffering. And there's a certain amount. It's not, healing developmental trauma is not like going to get a massage where you go and you pay $100 and you want to be feeling good at the end of that session. That's not transforming touch. You might get to an end of session and you might say, I don't feel anything. Or you might get to an end and say, I don't know what I feel. And then a day or two later, you're like, oh my goodness, what's going on with my body? What's happening? Or you might go to a session and you're all over the place all through the session. There's endless possibilities of what's going to happen when you're using transforming touch. But the outcome is not up to me. The outcome is up to you and your faith and what's happening with you and God, not me.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Do you have any idea of why some people react differently than others? Why sometimes you feel, sometimes not? Is there anything the way the person reacts, is there anything that it tells you?
I wish there was a formula.
Right.
The only thing I can kind of make sense out of it is to go attachment. When I look at attachment, we have secure and insecure are the two basic attachments. And I find that developmental trauma, almost 100%, is insecure attachment. And then we break down insecure attachment, and there's anxious, and there's avoidant, and there's disorganized. And those that are avoiding tend to not show anything for a while. It takes them a bit before we see it on the surface. They may be having it underneath the surface, but they don't always tell us. And then we get into anxious, and anxious is all over the surface, and it's a lot of stress and anxiety coming through, and so we see it more. And then there's the disorganized. The disorganized says, my body and my mind are not always connected. So the body could be going one direction and the mind could be going another. It can be all over the place. So it's difficult to say, oh, and there's no 100%. So on why somebody responds one way and another, we do know that just as the studies show us, that there's a percentage, about 15 to 20% of the population, that basically will never show. They're always going to be a bit hidden. And by knowing that they're a bit hidden, it's like, I don't measure outcome by your behavior. And so I'm not going to measure your outcome and go, oh, well, you had a big response, so you must be doing really well. No. Oftentimes, those who have no response are doing fantastic. So it's being able to hold that and just go, let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens for you. And we know that when people go, oh, this isn't working, that's resistance. They're really fighting not to change because we're not designed to change. Our body survives based on all the experiences we have to this date. And it says, this is the set point. This is where I have to be. My temperature, my pulse rate, everything, my respiration, how I'm breathing, everything has to be right here. And you start messing with that, and the body's not going to be happy. It wants to stay there. So you move it and you give it more space, and it's like, oh no, now I have to move, I have to change. Everything has to change on a cellular level. Bodies don't want to do that. So we don't know. We don't know. I don't know. I never know for sure what's going to happen.
And is there anything, maybe even it's just advice that I'm asking for? Is there anything that a client, the client that's coming to the practitioner, is there anything that they can look at to give them that confidence that something is happening? Because at times they come in and they feel like after 5, 6, even 7 sessions, like nothing.
Right.
Is there anything to give them that confidence to continue? Um,
Well, one thing, and we're probably neglected this as practitioners. Something I haven't pushed very often and haven't even said very often is that one thing that we probably could do as practitioners would say on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is absolutely nothing and 10 is maximum overwhelm, maximum activation, maximum disturbance in your system, either in your sleep, the way you eat, the way you're going through life the next day. Um, and we start asking people when they come in, where are you on 0 to 10? What is your number? They might say a 1. Okay, great. We put down a 1. And then at the end of the session, say, where are you now? Maybe they're going to say they're at a 3. Maybe they're going to say they're at a 7. Maybe they're going to say they're at 0. Maybe they're going to say they're at 1. We write it down. We start documenting that. In between the last session and this session, did you notice anything different? Important question. Waiting on the system. There you go.
I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Sometimes the system does things that we don't expect. So we look at that, we just start giving a little bit of measurement. And healing truly works best when we don't know it. So
Okay.
there's that hidden caveat there that we can't forget that, oh yeah, if I don't think I'm getting better, am I getting better? Look at all your relationships. Look at all the people you're in relationship with. Are you fighting more with your partner? Are you fighting less? Are you happier at work? Are you unhappy at work? Are you happy with your kids? Are you spending more time with your kids? Because we tend to avoid our children first. They're the first things we avoid when we're overwhelmed. So we want to know, what's your relationship? Did you take your kids to the park this week? Did you take them out for ice cream or sorbet or anything? What time did you spend alone with your children? Did you play a family game? Did you do anything together? Did you help your child with their homework? People don't look at all of those things as changes because most people say, there's nothing wrong with me. My family's perfect. I'm perfect. And the whole world is perfect. Then my question is, why are you bothering me? Go on down the road. Go on down the road. If you're that perfect, there's nothing
Yeah.
I can do for you.
Yeah.
But people lock that in. I would be happy if my wife would be happy. What do you mean? You'd be happy if my wife wasn't always mad at me, I would be happy. Oh, why do people get mad? Because they want something they're not getting. What does your wife want from you that you're not giving her? Then it takes the wife out of the picture, and all of a sudden it's me and you. And what does she want that you're not giving her? And
Yeah.
why aren't you? That's the other question. Maybe she just wants you to spend 5 minutes with the baby so she can go to the bathroom. It doesn't mean she wants you to build her a new house in a new neighborhood at millions of dollars. It could be tiny, tiny stuff. And when tiny stuff isn't seen, we don't know. So that's why healing is so complex. When you look and you go, oh, well, yeah, my wife asked me to hold the baby while she went to the bathroom and I did it. She didn't yell at me for almost 5 minutes after that. I'm going, well, there we are. That's healing.
That's the answer.
That's it. Thank God. There's the answer. Yeah, just because you heard her tell you what she needed. And up until that moment, you weren't hearing what she needed because activated people are deaf.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's so simple. A glass of water. hold the baby, let me go to the bathroom. Especially if it's a 2-year-old banging at the bathroom door. Mommy, mommy, mommy. They, really want somebody to give them that little break.
Mhm.
And we can only give breaks when we're not so overwhelmed because
Beautiful.
we don't hear the baby knocking at all. Then we know there's trouble in that house.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, with your answering, your healing really is that simple. It's just us tracking it is where we is where we're at, like questioning ourselves. Yeah.
That, that could be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Yeah. It's just that our awareness is
Yeah.
limited by our activation.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. And you basically answered also what I wanted to ask and what I get asked so many times is how many times? When are we when, how long is this gonna take? And the answer really is there is no answer.
There is no answer.
It's yeah, it's much
Yeah.
deeper than that.
I've had people for seems like forever, and I have some people that are within a few months they move on. Their life changes. There's in regulation, we have dysregulation, and we have autoregulation, and we have self-regulation, and we have co-regulation. And all of those sound really exciting. And you think that we have self-regulation on board, but with developmental trauma, oftentimes it's been ruptured. So we believe that the dysregulation is self-regulation. They've kind of reversed roles in there. So we want to be sure and we've kind of to nuance to understand that every time I come home, the baby's crying and I'm activated because the baby's crying. So I don't know why I'm activated. I just can't tolerate the baby crying. It's too noisy when I go home. So instead of going home, I'm going to walk an extra block to take a little bit longer to get home. And first, it doesn't even start off intentional, but somewhere in there, it's actually intentional that you take longer to get home, a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit, another block added on, another block, because you can't tolerate the baby's crying. In our work, what we know is that self-regulation comes on board out of nowhere. It seems to just all of a sudden, poof, there it is. We're like, where'd you come from? And self-regulation says, you know, I don't tolerate the baby crying, but I can handle it. I can walk in my house. I can greet my wife and my children, and I can hear the baby crying, and I can keep myself safe. I don't have to overreact by avoiding. And that's self-regulation. And some people, when they hit that, it's like the angels have opened up the heavens and they're playing the flutes or whatever, and everything's wonderful
Yeah.
and life has changed and it's miraculous. And that's enough for some. And some wait for co-regulation. And in co-regulation, we don't even know who we're regulating with. It's just people that are happy, or at least as happy as us, that we're regulating with each other to where, oh, I don't have any effort. It's just effortless.
Wow. It's brilliant. Beautiful. Wow. Can Dr. Terrell, can would you be able to possibly sum it up? And I know this might be encompassing a lot, but basically summing up what how transforming touch can help every single person in their day-to-day life. Like how understanding it's not a one size fits all. How can it how does it really and I know we covered a lot of this because we came into self-regulation, we came into how the body responds to all this.
Mhm.
Would if you had to give a message to everybody, how can transforming touch help every person in their day-to-day life, business, family, relationships? And I know we spoke about this. I just want to finish
Well,
the message.
I think I don't know that mm, my words are scrambling for a second. So hold
Yeah, no
on.
worries. Yeah, please, no worries.
I think that so many of us are starving to be seen in a way without expectation. Um, I think transforming touch, or my hope is, we're not chasing people. We're not chasing you. When you're with me, I'm not going to chase you. Meaning, I don't have to convince you. I don't have to change you. I don't have to work on everything that pops up. I don't have to do any of those things. That I can sit with God, sit in my quiet space, be aware of you, and wait for you for when your system, when who you are, your entire spiritual self, your soul, your heart, your mind, your body is ready to connect. I keep setting the table for you to come and eat, but I'm not going to force you to the table. I'm not going to force you to do anything. I'm not going to know what's ahead for you. What I only thing that I am aware of is the possibility that through this work, you get a split second in time to make a different choice. A split second. And in that split second, maybe you'll choose something less effortless, something easier, something for the betterment of yourself, betterment of your family, your children, your husband, your wife, or your husbands and your wives, depending on where you live in the world, whatever you happen to create, you're going to figure out, okay, maybe I'm going to live life a little different. And you know, I laugh because your question, this is another answer to the same question.
Please.
O'Hare International Airport, Chicago, monster of an airport. I fly through Newark with my eyes shut. Going through O'Hare, it's like, oh, there's so many people. So everybody's crammed together. So I go to O'Hare, I'm running late. I get there. We get to the line. I'm waiting to board my plane. We board the plane, and we're on the plane, and we're on the plane, and we're on the plane. We're still on the plane. And then they come on and they say, you have to get off the plane. Because of bad weather, the crew did not make it. And the crew we have now is timed out. So now you have to get a new crew. So get off the plane. And your next flight will be in so many hours. Oh, by the way, that plane didn't make it either. Next flight is in so many more hours. Oh, by the way, it's now 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no more planes coming. You have to go, and it's okay. You go to this hotel, they'll take you. We'll cover your costs. Oh, by the way, after waiting 2 hours in line at this hotel, they don't have any rooms left, and you have to go back to the airport. And oh, by the way, there'll be a first flight in the morning. It'll be all right. We'll have you on the first flight out. Oh, by the way, that flight, it's full. You can't get on it. Maybe the next, oh no, that flight isn't coming because of weather. Oh no, now 3 days and no flight out. And it's now, I guess it started on Sunday because that's Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. It's now Wednesday. And I'm standing there in the airport. I'm going, I haven't lost it yet. I haven't screamed at anybody yet. None of my old fight behavior is in place. I'm not telling them at the desk, do they not know who I am? they should get me home because I'm more important than everybody else. I haven't gone that crazy yet. There's been no crazy behavior. Now, what do I need to do now? God said, I've been telling you this. You just didn't hear me completely. Check with another airline. And I went, what? And I checked with another airline, and within an hour, I was on a flight and I was back home in 3 hours. But I didn't lose it. At that moment, I knew this is working. But as a practitioner, it's not just for my client. Both of us in relationship heal. One person doesn't ever heal alone. I, as a practitioner, am healing every time I touch someone. They're healing every time they let me. So thank God. This is a dual program, two healings, two people. Yeah.
Incredible.
So that's kind of sums it up for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Terrell. I appreciate it. I'm humbled to have had this conversation with you and to have trained under you and for you to be in my life. I mean, my life has changed in crazy ways since I started training under you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank
May
God.
God bless you with many, many more healthy, happy years to be able to do your holy work and helping and healing the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And